Welcome back to Teacup Kitchen. This week's recipe was inspired by Cinco de Mayo. I hope you had fun celebrating on Tuesday. It was Taco Tuesday as well as Cinco de Mayo, so I hope you had some delicious Mexican food. And as I was thinking about what to make this week, I looked at the calendar and realized that Sunday is Mother's Day. So this week we're going to help answer that age-old question that moms just love so much. Hey Mom, what's for dinner? This week we're going to make a chicken enchilada casserole. So maybe on Mother's Day, instead of making your mom breakfast in bed or brunch, you take some of the weight off of her and make a delicious dinner for your family. A casserole is basically a dish with all of your ingredients in one. And I think they get a little bit of a bad rap. They're kind of considered like old-fashioned. However, casseroles are delicious and easy to make. So it's a good way for kids especially to get started making main dishes in the kitchen. So let's talk about our ingredients and get started with our recipe for the week. So this week I went ahead and prepped a lot of the ingredients that we're going to need for our creamy chicken enchilada casserole. And as I take you through them, I'm going to give you some tips and hints on how to make this successful. First of all, you're going to need 1 can of cream of chicken soup, 1 4-ounce can of diced green chilies, a pint or regular size container of sour cream, some corn tortillas. I have the small sized and you'll see why a little bit later. You're also going to need some chicken. Now, normally I would cheat and I would buy a rotisserie chicken at the grocery store. However, we went looking for a rotisserie chicken and guess what? None to be found. So instead, I took some boneless, skinless chicken breasts and I poached them. Poaching is simply taking your chicken, putting it in a saucepan, salt, pepper, cover it with water, you bring it to a boil, and then you let it simmer for about 7 to 8 minutes until your chicken is cooked through. And then I chopped and shredded that chicken so it's ready to go. You can also pan fry your chicken or put it in the oven. However, no matter what method you use, I want you to always, always remember this guy right here is your friend in the kitchen. This is a kitchen thermometer. The internal temperature, that means the temperature inside the cooked chicken, needs to reach 165. That's the magic number for chicken, 165. And once it's reached 165 degrees, you're good to go. So I have my chicken all chopped up and ready. Now let's talk about cheese. If you know me, you know I think cheese could be its own food group. It's probably my favorite ingredient. For this recipe, you're going to need 3/4 pound of pepper jack and 1/2 pound of cheddar. I went ahead and shredded my blocks of cheese. Here's where you can also have a little supermarket shortcut. You can buy your cheese in a bag already shredded. I prefer to shred my own because I don't like the stuff that they add to the bag. It makes the cheese a little bit grainy when it melts. So I've shredded my own, but feel free to grab a bag of pepper jack and a bag of shredded cheddar. So we have all of our ingredients ready to go, except this last little magical guy. This is a green onion I have chopped up. I love green onions because they're like a 2-for-1. You get 2 different parts of that onion. You get the whites, which is usually what we use inside a recipe, and then those leafy green tops I've chopped up for a garnish. So when you chop up your green onion, you're going to chop up the whites and put them aside, and chop up the greens and put them aside. Those are going to come in at the very end of our recipe, kind of for a garnish so we look like fancy chefs. So we have all of our ingredients. I'm going to use my KitchenAid mixer. You can use a bowl and a spoon to mix up these ingredients. And I think we're ready to get started. All right, the first step in our recipe this week is to make the creamy, cheesy part of the chicken enchilada casserole. And one of the great things about casseroles is that they are relatively easy. So for this one, we are basically dumping all of our ingredients into our bowl and mixing it up. First, we're going to put in our cream of chicken soup. Just dump the whole thing in there. Cream of chicken is not something that a lot of people eat by itself, but it is kind of a staple ingredient in casseroles. Going to dump in my green chilies, and if you're someone who's worried about things being too spicy, don't worry about it. These green chilies are a lot more mild than if we were to cut up fresh chilies. I'm going to dump in the white part of my green onion. Then we're going to grab our sour cream, and all of the sour cream goes in. I love how easy that comes out of the container. And then our shredded pepper jack. All of the pepper jack goes inside the casserole. Now, if you're like me and you love cheese, this should come as no surprise. I grated a little bit extra of the cheddar cheese. I'm going to grab a little handful and just add that in. Make mine a little cheesier. Now right now you might be saying to yourself, well, what about the chicken? Well, the chicken's going to come next. So first we're going to mix all of the creamy, cheesy part of our casserole. I'm just going to lock up my mixer and let it get a good stir. That looks pretty good. Great. Now, before we move on to adding our chicken, we have one more step that we need to do. Now that we have our cheesy, creamy mixture all mixed up, before we throw the chicken in there, we're going to do one step. We're going to take out about a cup to a cup and a half of this mixture, and we're going to set it aside. And you guys, you don't have to be exact. I'm just going to take out, I don't know, 3 scoops or so, maybe 4. And I'm going to take this and set it aside. We're going to need that a little bit later in the recipe. Now that we've taken that out, we're going to take our chicken and add it with the rest of the original mixture that we already mixed up. Lock down my mixer and let it do its thing. I'm going to incorporate all of that chicken into our creamy mixture to make this now a chicken enchilada casserole. That didn't take very long. That's why I love my KitchenAid mixer. All right. Now we have our mixture ready to go. It's time to build our casserole. Let's talk about what you're going to need to do. First, you want to preheat your oven to 350. Remember, you want to get your oven going because it does take a little while for it to heat up. The recipe calls for a 9 by 13 baking dish, which is a pretty standard casserole size dish. I prefer this oval shaped one I have because, you know, it's pretty. So you can really use any size baking dish you want. Your layers just might be a little bit taller or thinner depending on the size of your baking dish. All right, you're going to need a couple of things. You're going to need your tortillas handy and your chicken mixture handy. And we're going to take those tortillas and we're basically going to tear them up. And one of the reasons I like this rounded dish is that the rounded edges of my tortilla fit right inside. And you're going to layer the whole bottom with the torn pieces of tortilla. Make sure you cover the entire thing. So for my casserole, that took 2.5 tortillas or so. And once you have your layer of tortillas, you're going to grab your mixture. I would take about half of that mixture is going to go right on top of those tortillas. Okay, about half of your chicken mixture. And once you have that in there, set that aside so it's not in the way. Just take a spatula or a spoon and you're just going to kind of smooth it out. You want it to be in a nice even layer. Remember, when we bake things in the oven, whether it's a sweet treat or a casserole, you really want your layers to be nice and even so that everything cooks at the same temperature. And with this casserole, we're not really cooking anything. We're just basically heating it all the way through. All right, so we've got one layer done. Let's keep building. Next layer, another layer of tortillas. I didn't even tear that one. Putting in the other layer of tortillas. If you really love tortillas, go ahead and make your layer a little thicker. That's totally your choice. Now you're going to take all of the rest of your chicken mixture and dump it right on top. That's why we used half. So one layer was about half and the second layer was about half. Set this guy aside so I have both my hands. And then remember, use your spatula and smooth it out. You guys, don't be worried about it being perfect. Casseroles are delicious no matter what. Okay, so we have our 2 main layers done so far. For the last layer, we're going to once again layer of tortillas. And I think for this top layer, I'm going to go a little heavier. I'm going to use 4 tortillas. I know, crazy. And make a nice top layer. Now, we're going to grab that reserved mixture we grabbed before. Remember when we put in the creamy, cheesy, without chicken mixture? This guy goes right on top. And it's going to be a thinner layer than the others, but it's going to give it a nice creamy texture all the way through to just have that thin layer on top without the chicken. And then the chicken is layered inside. Looks pretty good. Great. Now one last thing before we throw it into the oven. Cheese. I take my grated cheddar and it goes right on top. And honestly guys, this is kind of to taste. You can use as much or as little as you'd like. And if you really like spicy, instead of cheddar on top, you could use more pepper jack. Totally up to you, personal preference. You could even use Monterey Jack cheese and keep this all like a creamy white casserole for the beautiful look. All right, it looks ready to go. We are going to take this casserole and put it into the oven for 40 to 45 minutes at 350 degrees. And when it comes out, don't dive in. I know you will want to, but when it comes out, we're going to let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes so that everything tightens up, and when you cut it, it doesn't fall apart. And when it's baked and delicious, I'm going to show you how you can serve it up for your family on Mother's Day. Okay, welcome back. It's been about an hour. I had my casserole in the oven for about 45 minutes, and then I let it sit for about 15 minutes before I sliced into it. I hope while your casserole was in the oven baking, you cleaned up your kitchen, because the only thing your mom's gonna like more than a nice dinner is having a clean kitchen afterwards. So are you ready for the big reveal? I have here a slice of our layered casserole. You can see it's pretty ooey gooey. And if you let it sit a little longer than 15 minutes, it'll hold its shape even better, but I couldn't wait. It was time to dive in. So for presentation, which is an important part of being a cook or chef, I'm gonna garnish my casserole with a little dollop of sour cream, some slices of avocado, which makes everything better. And then, remember those green onions that we saved from our 2-for-1 green onions? We're gonna sprinkle a few of those right on top. And guys, there you have it. Creamy, cheesy chicken enchilada casserole, perfect for your family and especially for your mom on this Mother's Day. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Teacup Kitchen, and I wish all of the moms out there a very happy Mother's Day.